I'm Nora, and I always get what I want. It is not my fault that I am more intelligent, attractive, and popular. That's how things operate. And Alice, my older sister, should have realized it by now. I don't need to battle for what I want. I only need to want it, and it will become mine. And Alice's wedding gown was no exception. Alice has always been dull, practical, bland, and forgettable. She doesn't know how to enjoy life. While I was the focus of attention, Alice remained in the background, unrecognized and irrelevant. I can't remember when our parents started favoring me more. Maybe it was when we were kids, when I cried for anything. They would go get it for me first. And Alice? She never protested, always remained silent and cooperative. I grew used to it. Alice had a steady job and a good fiancé, but nothing in her life was thrilling. Even her wedding was shaping out to be a tiny, uninspired affair. I didn't think much of it until I saw her wedding gown. It was breathtaking. I couldn't squander it on a forgettable wedding. My wedding day was approaching quickly, and I needed everything to be perfect. A garden ceremony, a beautiful backdrop, and most importantly, an exquisite gown. When I remembered that Alice had already purchased hers, I knew fate had provided me with the solution. She wasn't utilizing it yet, correct? I need it now. Mom and I talked about it, and she absolutely agreed. Alice was not selfish. She constantly gave in to me. She'd understand. So, without asking, Mom and I removed the outfit from her wardrobe, and when I tried it on, I knew it was mine. I gazed at myself in the mirror, slowly rotating. Perfection. Alice would not mind. When she entered the room, her expression was wrong. She did not yell. She did not shout. She simply looked at me. I could sense the strain, but shook it aside. "It's just a dress, Alice. You can find another one." She did not answer immediately. That expression, as if she were assessing me, calculating something. After a minute, she simply stated, "Fine. If you love it that much." That was it. I won. Nevertheless, I felt an odd impression. It was too easy. Everything was perfect. The garden setting, the precisely aligned chairs, and the visitors, all waiting in expectation. I walked down the aisle wearing Alice's dress, which was now mine. Nobody could refute that. It looked better on me. I approached Ashton, my soon-to-be husband, the epitome of elegance. This was it, my ideal fairy tale. And then a flood of water struck me. Cold. Shocking. I shouted as a big rush from the fountain behind me came right at me. The clothing soaked through and clung to me. The exquisite lace became translucent, showing everything. My makeup ran, and my hair fell into a soggy mess. I heard my mother's shocked gasp, the guests' gasps, and barely restrained laughing from behind me. And as I gazed at Alice, she was entirely dry, standing there quiet, watching my beautiful moment unravel. I didn't need anyone to explain what had happened. Alice had done it. The astonishment, the rage, it erupted within me. I clenched my hands and approached her. "You're the only one who's dry." She smiled. "Have no fear. There is no guilt. Just a little mishap. Like when you accidentally spilled a punch on my sweet 16 dress. Did she dare to bring it up? I'd already forgotten about it. A tiny mishap. A simple error. What about Alice? She never forgets anything. You planned this, didn't you?" She didn't respond. I wanted to scream, take off the garment, and make Alice feel as embarrassed as I did. But then I heard my mom's voice. "Nora, get inside now. We'll fix this." I clenched my teeth, turned away, and marched out of my own wedding, enraged. Inside the dressing room, I looked at myself in the mirror. A total calamity. Alice had won the round, but it wasn't over. She thought she could disgrace me, spoil my wedding, or take away my moment. She would come to regret this. I would ensure that she never forgot this day. I sat in the changing room, soaked, ashamed, and enraged. My idyllic day was shattered. My clothing, Alice's dress, clung to me like a second skin, damp and pitiful. My makeup was ruined, and my hair was a mess. The visitors were whispering outside, and I could sense their judging looks through the walls. Alice had planned it. That bitch. She had been playing the long game, waiting for the right opportunity to strike, and I'd let her win. I would not make that mistake again. Mom and the wedding coordinator rushed around me, attempting to dry the dress, fix my hair, and rescue the calamity that had occurred in front of hundreds of guests. "We'll move the ceremony inside," Mom stayed with her typical soothing tone. "We can still make this work, darling." I wasn't even listening. All I could think about was Alice standing there, cocky and unaffected by the chaos she had caused. I clenched my fist. She thought this was over. No, this was only the beginning. When my dress was halfway dry, I walked out of the dressing room, ignoring Mom's protests. I needed to find Alice. I saw her standing on the covered terrace with Nicholas and Samantha, sipping champagne as if she hadn't just committed social assassination. She turned to meet my eyes and grinned. "That smile!" "You!" I shouted, walking directly toward her. Samantha quickly moved in front of Alice, arms crossed, as if she were her personal bodyguard. "Nora, maybe you should cool off," she remarked, barely concealing her pleasure. I glared at her. "Get out of my way." Alice tipped her head, appearing to look innocent. "Something wrong, little sister?" she said, her voice as sweet as sugar. I wanted to slap her. "You think this is funny?" I growled. "You just destroyed my wedding." Alice took a leisurely drink of champagne before responding. "Did I?" I shook with wrath. "You knew. You planned this. The fountain—" Alice shrugged. "Accidents happen, Nora. You should be careful where you stand." I saw red. "You stole my moment," I exclaimed. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." Her expression did not change. "Oh, you mean like when you stole my dress, or my prom date, or my college letter?" My mouth opened, but no words emerged. Nicholas, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke up. "You know, Nora, it's funny how you never cared when it was Alice losing something." My eyes narrowed as I turned to face him. "Stay out of this," I yelled. He did not back down. "I've watched you walk all over Alice for years," he remarked quietly but firmly. "And now that she finally stands up to you, you can't handle it." I could feel everyone's gaze on me, their judgment, their unspoken agreement. For the first time in my life, I had a scary realization. I was not the victim here. I was the villain. I refused to let Alice win. Fine. She received a little vengeance. She had her moment of glory. But I was not going to let one foolish prank define my wedding day. So I did what I know best. I smiled, I straightened my shoulders, smoothed my hair, and if nothing had happened, "We're moving the ceremony inside," I said loudly enough for the surrounding guests to hear. "A little rain won't stop me from marrying the love of my life." The audience applauded. I turned my back on Alice and walked away gracefully, dragging my dripping garment behind me. She wouldn't have the last laugh. The indoor ceremony was gorgeous. Not perfect, but still lovely. I made an effort to grin throughout my vows, to keep my head up, and to appear as if nothing had gone wrong. But deep inside, I was fuming. And just when I thought things couldn't get much worse, I overheard something that made my blood boil. Dad had given Alice money for new clothing. He'd never done that for me. He had always allowed Mom to take charge and dote on me, but he had never stepped in like this. He had never gone out of his way for Alice previously, and now, suddenly, he was playing the supportive father. It felt like betrayal. I pulled him aside after the wedding. "You helped her?" I demanded. Dad exhaled. "Nora, you have to understand—" "No," I interrupted him. "I don't have to understand anything. You took her side." "She deserved it," he explained simply. I stared at him, feeling as if the ground had just been ripped from under me. "I'm your daughter too," I said quietly. "Yes," he answered, "but Alice has never had anyone in her corner. And maybe that wasn't fair." I felt as though I had been slapped. For the first time in my life, I recognized that my parents' preference may not be as easy as I had previously assumed. I didn't have time to digest Dad's comments, because as soon as I stepped outside, I noticed Alice leaving. She walked away from my wedding. "Where is she going?" I demanded, turning to Nicholas, who was standing near the entrance. He didn't even seem astonished. "She's choosing herself," he explained simply. I clenched my fist. She was leaving me behind. The wedding photographer invited me to join Ashton and the bridal party for photographs. I took a deep breath, feigned a grin, and straightened my clothing. One final great position. One final great moment. Even if everything was already falling apart. The wedding has concluded. The honeymoon has come and gone. And then, in the stillness of my new life, I noticed something disturbing. Alice had vanished from my universe. No calls. There are no visits. There will be no sisterly bickering. For the first time in my life, I was alone, and I did not like it. I gazed at my phone for several days before ultimately messaging her. "Coffee? No drama, no competition. Just sisters, if you want." I did not expect her to respond, but when she did, her response was brief. "Maybe, but I'll be ordering my own drink." I exhaled. She was still Alice. I kept reminding myself that this time will be different. For the first time in my life, I wondered, have I finally lost something I can't get back? I anticipated things to return to normal. I assumed Alice would eventually get over it and return to her usual role as the quiet, understanding elder sister who never made trouble. But weeks have gone. She did not call. She did not make a visit. She didn't seek my approval as she used to. Alice had left me for the first time in my life, and I wasn't sure how to handle it. At first, I convinced myself that I didn't care. I'm married now. I had Ashton, my perfect husband, and a wonderful new life. I had events to attend, social media postings to organize, and a perfect life to create. Alice had always been the dull one. It's not like I needed her. However, one day I scrolled past an Instagram post, a photo of Alice, Nicholas, and Samantha laughing together at a cafe. Alice gazed. Different. More easygoing. I had never seen her so alive. I stared at the television, a knot forming in my stomach. She was not missing me. She thrived without me. I hadn't realized how much I relied on Alice's presence. She was always the one who remembered anniversaries, managed family commitments, and ensured everything ran well. Without her, I started to notice the fissures. Mom's calls to me were less joyful and more distracted. When I mentioned Alice, she sighed and said, "She's busy. What are you up to now?" Dad, on the other hand, had become increasingly aloof from me. When I tried to talk to him, he just seemed dissatisfied. "Are you ever going to apologize to your sister?" he asked me unexpectedly. I scoffed. "For what? That fountain thing? It was just a prank." He shakes his head. "That wasn't just about the dress, Nora. You don't get it, do you?" The worst part is that I didn't. I wasn't sure why things felt different now. Alice finally consented to join me for coffee. I dressed nicely, better than usual even. I wanted her to see me looking flawless and remember who I was. But when I entered the cafe, I froze. Alice was already there, seated in a corner, dressed in a suit. Not some baggy work suit, but an elegant, well-tailored white suit. She gazed. Expensive. Confidence. She seemed to have stepped into a version of herself that I had never seen before. For the first time in my life, I felt underdressed beside her. I sat down across from her and cleared my throat. "So, how's married life going?" I inquired, attempting to maintain my customary charm. Alice stirred her coffee slowly and took her time before responding. "Good. How's yours?" I offered her my best rehearsed smile. "Perfect." She nodded, unconvinced. We sat there in uneasy quiet. I was not used to this. Normally, Alice would fill in the gaps and make me feel at ease. But this time, she simply let the silence last. It drove me mad. "Look," I finally said, "I didn't come here to fight. I just thought maybe we could start fresh." Alice bent her head, examining me as if I were a conundrum she had previously solved. "You want a fresh start?" she inquired. I nodded fast. "Yes. I mean, we're sisters. Family. We shouldn't let some silly wedding drama get in the way." She put her cup down and folded her hands. "Nora, do you even understand what you did?" I felt my smile falter. "I mean, it was just a dress?" Alice laughed, not a harsh laugh, a fatigued one. "It was never about the dress," she explained. "It was about everything. Every single time you took something from me because you knew you could, and I let you. Because that's what family does, right? We share." I swallowed hard. "So what now?" I inquired, attempting to keep my tone light. "You're done with me? You're cutting me out of your life?" Alice did not respond right away. She continued, "I think I'm just done pretending that nothing ever happened." It struck me harder than I expected. I'd come here hoping I could charm my way back inside. I could mend things by sweeping them under the rug, like I had always done. But Alice had changed. She wasn't following my rules anymore. I was furious when I left that cafe. Alice wanted to act better than me right now? Fine. She might start a new life for herself, but I needed to focus on my own life. I thought I did. Because the more I tried to reassure myself that everything was okay, the more I realized I was not. The ideal marriage I had envisioned with Ashton. It wasn't quite perfect. At first, he was lovely, doting, and charming as I had anticipated. But after the wedding, something changed. He started working late more frequently. He spends more time on his phone. He did not give me as many compliments. One night, while reading through Instagram, I came upon a tagged photo of him at a bar with a group of ladies. He didn't say anything about going out that night. For the first time, I felt insecure. This was not how things were supposed to be. I was Nora. I was supposed to have a great existence. However, everything was slipping through my fingers. I sat in my luxury apartment, staring at my phone. For years, I believed that as long as I was winning and on top, nothing else was important. What about now? My connection with Alice was in ruins. My father had turned on me. My husband was distant, perhaps even cheating. Worst of all, I lacked identity without them. I thought I had everything. But just maybe, Alice had always been the glue that held my existence together. And now that she's gone, I was finally beginning to fall apart. I gazed at my phone for several hours, considering whether or not to type the message. It was humiliating. I've never apologized, but I couldn't get rid of the sensation that if I didn't do something, I'd lose Alice forever. I took a big breath and typed, "Alice, I think I finally got it, and I'm sorry." I pressed send and waited. Seconds passed, then it was minutes, then finally, 3 small dots appeared. I held my breath. Her response was short. "We'll see," I exhaled. It was not forgiveness, but there was something. I gazed at Alice's response on my phone's screen. "We'll see." That was it. No forgiveness, no warmth. There was no indication that she was willing to patch things up. It felt like a slap to the face. For years, I had been able to talk my way out of any situation. Alice had always been the predictable, pleasant person who never kept grudges. What about now? She didn't budge. For the first time in my life, I wasn't in control. I needed a distraction, something to distract my mind off Alice and the unnerving way my life seemed to be unraveling. So I returned my focus to Ashton. At first, I persuaded myself I was being overly worried. Yes, he was working late more frequently. Yes, he seemed more distant. Yes, I had seen some inappropriate Instagram photographs. But was he still coming home to me? He still kissed me goodbye in the mornings and called me beautiful. That meant everything was okay, hasn't it? Then one night, he arrived home smelling like someone else's perfume. I didn't say anything immediately. Instead, I sat on the couch browsing through my phone, pretending I wasn't angry. "Long night?" I inquired nonchalantly. He paused. A fraction of a second was too long. "Yeah, work ran late," he explained, putting his jacket onto the chair. "Client dinner." I forced a smile, lied through my teeth. "Oh, that's funny. Because Karen posted a picture of you at a bar with some girl in a red dress." Silence. For the first time, I noticed something in his eyes that I never expected. Guilt. The argument that ensued was explosive. "I was just out with friends, Nora," he said. "It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal?" I said, my voice cracking. "Then why did you lie about it?" His jaw stiffened. Caught. Instead of apologizing, he turned it back on me. "You're overreacting as usual," he said. "God, everything with you has to be dramatic." I stared at him. For years, I believed I was in charge of my life and relationships. I was the center of attention, always coming out on top. What about now? The man I married did not even respect me, and for the first time, I realized something that made me feel sick. I'd spent my entire life taking from Alice because it made me feel strong, and Ashton was doing the same thing to me, taking my faith, my security, my certainty. Wasn't this poetic justice? Maybe Alice had always felt this way, and I despised it. I needed to get out of this flat, away from Ashton, away from the chaos that was my existence. So I did something I hadn't done in several months. I drove to Alice's apartment. I'm not sure why I expected her to welcome me in. Perhaps she always had. However, when I rang her doorbell, it was not Alice who answered. It was Nicholas. His expression stiffened immediately. "What are you doing here, Nora?" he inquired. I paused. I need to talk to Alice." He did not move, did not welcome me in. "She's busy." For the first time in my life, I felt like an outsider in my sister's universe. Nicholas and I had never been particularly close, but he was always nice, tolerant. What about now? Now I was not even worth his patience. "Nicholas, please," I pleaded, hating how soft my voice sounded. "I just need 5 minutes." He gave me a long look. Finally, he sighed and moved aside. "She's in the back. Don't screw this up." I walked in with my heart thumping, and when I saw Alice sitting on the couch, nonchalantly sipping tea and flipping through her own wedding magazine, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. She gazed. "Happy?" As if she hadn't noticed my absence from her life. "You seem surprised to see me," Alice replied without looking up. I feigned a laugh. "Well, I didn't expect to be greeted like an unwanted guest." Alice finally returned my eyes. "And yet here we are." I swallowed hard. "Alice, I don't know how things got this bad between us." She set down her teacup, raised an eyebrow. "You really don't?" That left me speechless. So I did what I had always done. I attempted to downplay it. "Look, I was awful to you at the wedding. I know that." "But I was stressed, Alice. You know how much pressure I was under." Alice leaned forward, elbows resting on her knees. "Nora, do you even hear yourself?" she inquired. "Everything is always about you, your stress, your feelings, your wedding." I flinched. "I just want things to go back to how they were." Alice shakes her head. "They never will." The words struck me like a knife in the chest. I muttered, "So that's it? You're done with me?" Alice exhaled slowly. "I don't hate you, Nora," she insisted, and I nearly believed her. "But I'm done being the sister who gives and gives while you take and take. I spent years standing in your shadow. I won't do it anymore. I should have fought harder. I should have reasoned with her and told her that she needed me just as much as I needed her. But for the first time, I noticed it clearly. She didn't need me. Not anymore." I left Alice's apartment feeling numb. Everyone felt final. I'd spent my entire life winning, and for the first time, I had lost. Not a dress, not a wedding, but my sister. And it was my fault. I sat in my car, staring at my phone and scrolling mindlessly. Then I saw it. Alice's wedding announcement, a tiny and personal ceremony. There's no huge show, there's no need for attention, just her, Nicholas, and the ones who really mattered. I was not invited, and for the first time, I realized what it was like to be invisible. That night, I sent Alice one final message. I hope your wedding is everything you want it to be. I mean that. This time, she did not respond, and it hurt more than anything else. Days progressed into weeks. Alice did not reply to my mail. I kept checking my phone, hoping for any acknowledgement, some semblance of connection, but there was none. Nothing at all. She'd finally finished it. She'd cut me out of her life. And the worst part? The world did not break apart without me. It kept rotating without me in the center. Alice was arranging her wedding. Dad called her, not me. Mom wasn't as doting on me as she used to, and Ashton had also stopped trying. I was alone, and for the first time I had no idea how to solve it. I wanted to believe Ashton was not cheating, that I'd overreacted. I was merely paranoid because my life seemed to be falling out of control. The trouble was that if you start looking for indications, you will find them. Late evenings. He took phone calls in another room. He would read text messages with his screen tilted away from me. Finally, there's the genuine proof. One evening, I grabbed his blazer from the couch. A receipt dropped out. It came from a 5-star hotel. We hadn't been to this hotel before. He had no cause to be in the hotel. I glanced at the receipt in my hands, my heart racing in my ears. Perhaps this was the karma Alice had been looking for. Maybe I deserve it, but I was not Alice. I was not going to sit back and accept it. When Ashton arrived home, I was waiting for him. I did not cook dinner, did not set the table, did not perform the part of the perfect wife. I sat on the couch, clutching the receipt in my fingers. When he saw it, his expression altered immediately. Not a shock, not guilty, just an annoyance. "Where did you get that?" he said, sighing. Not even a denial. I laughed. Actually, I laughed. "That's your response? Where did you get that?" He ran his hand through his hair and said, "Nora, don't do this right now." "Oh, I think we're doing this." I sprang up, my voice trembling with wrath. "You think I'm stupid?" I snapped. "You think I won't see you snooping around?" "I've never cheated," he stated flatly. "Really? So what the hell is this?" I held out the receipt. He breathed sharply. "I needed space." Space. You required space in a hotel room. He didn't respond. That was enough of an answer. I'd always been the one who left others behind. I was the one who outgrown things, took what she wanted, and then moved on without looking back. What about now? I was the one left behind. And it was awful. "How long?" I inquired, my tone barely above a whisper. Ashton groaned and ran a hand down his face. "Does it matter?" I felt my world shatter. "It matters to me." He stared at me for quite some time before finally saying it. "A few months." I felt nauseous. Our marriage had only lasted a few months, and he had already checked out. I swallowed, pushing the lump in my throat down. "You didn't love me, did you?" I whispered. His quiet revealed everything I needed to know. I packed a bag that night. Not because he instructed me to leave, but I refused to allow him to see me fall apart. I booked a hotel, one he had never taken her to, and laid in bed, staring at my phone. I wanted to call anyone. Mom? No. She would simply try to fix it and make excuses for Ashton. Dad? No. He would simply repeat to me what he had told Alice. Actions have consequences, Nora. Alice? I lingered on her name for a long time. I had done everything to push her away. But suddenly I needed her. But I knew she would not arrive. I had made certain of that. A few days later, Alice received her wedding invitation. I almost did not open it. But curiosity got the better of me. It wasn't like my invitation, which was large and detailed. Just a basic, yet gorgeous card. The site is small and the ceremony is private. There's no spectacle, no performance. It was only her and the people who mattered, and at the bottom, a handwritten note. I didn't plan on sending this, but I'm doing it regardless. Come if you want. Don't unless you want to. Whatever happens, I'll be all right this time. She didn't need me anymore, and that stung more than being cheated. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sure what to do. I'd spent years stealing from Alice, expecting she'd always be present, and for the first time, she didn't ask me for anything. I could go, I could attend her wedding, pretend everything was fine, and try to reintegrate into her life as though nothing had happened, or I could let her go. The way she'd already let me go, the way Ashton did, the way Dad did, as everyone eventually did. I stared at the invitation for hours, pondering a decision that may no longer be mine to make. And when the wedding day arrived, I stayed home, because, for the first time in my life, I was not the central player in someone else's story. I was merely a girl who had lost everything, and for once, I had just myself to blame. On the day of Alice's wedding, I awoke alone. No texts, calls, or frantic messages from Mom asking where I was. I'd spent my entire life as the center of attention, the one everyone focused on. But today, nobody cared where I was. Alice was getting married. Dad was probably walking her down the aisle. Mom was probably worrying over last-minute things. Nicholas and Samantha were at her side. And me? I was nowhere. I'd made my choice, and now I had to deal with it. Later that night, I did something I knew would have negative consequences. I checked social media. Alice's wedding pictures were already online. She looked stunning, not simply because of the dress or the suit, as Alice obviously opted to wear a suit. She appeared happy, the kind of contentment that came from knowing yourself and not having to apologize for it. I continued scrolling, my chest tightening with each picture. There was a snapshot of Dad holding Alice, appearing more proud than I had ever seen him. A shot of Nicholas staring at her as if she were his entire universe. A candid photo of Alice and Samantha smiling over drinks, their arms around one another. And then, a photograph of the entire wedding party. I wasn't in it. And for the first time, I realized something brutally basic. Alice's life had gone on without me. My phone rang late at night. I almost didn't respond. But when I saw it was Mom, I took it up. "Nora," she murmured, her tone hesitant. "Did she seem happy?" I inquired before she could add anything else. There was a prolonged pause. "Yes," Mom said. "She did." I closed my eyes and swallowed down the lump in my throat. "Did she ask about me?" Another pause. "No," Mom replied softly. I breathed and nodded to myself. I'm not sure why I expected her to. Alice had already spoken all she needed to say. She had already let me leave. That night, I stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. For so long, I believed that I was unstoppable, that I could always get anything I desired, that I could always talk myself out of danger, that regardless of what I did, they would always forgive me. What about now? I'd lost my sister. I'd lost my father's respect. I'd lost my marriage, and no amount of trickery or charm could fix it, because truthfully, I had done this on myself. Alice had not taken anything from me. She had finally stopped allowing me to take it from her, and without her, without my normal safety net, without someone to blame for my blunders, I was forced to confront the one thing I had always avoided. Who am I without Alice? I did not call her. I did not text. I did not show up to her honeymoon suite pleading for pardon, because for the first time, I realized that this was not her lesson to learn. That was mine. Alice had already become the person she was destined to be, and now I had to determine whether I was capable of doing the same. Not for her, not for Mom, not for someone else's approval, only for myself. And maybe, just maybe, one day, when I finally find out how to be a person worthy of Alice's love again, we would find our way back to each other, but that day was not today. Today, all I could do was sit in the silence, in the loneliness I had created for myself, begin to transform into someone new. Story 2. Took my mom on her ideal vacation, but she left me behind after stealing my passport and money when we arrived. She was unaware of the surprise that awaited her when she checked into the motel. I wondered whether I was making the worst mistake of my life as I gazed at the first-class tickets to Venice that I was holding. My mother was whining over the coffee I had just given her, and her voice could be heard throughout my flat. "You know I can't drink this generic brand, Teresa, sweetheart. I assumed you could at least afford good coffee given your posh profession." I am that. Teresa, I am a 32-year-old marketing executive who is still frantically attempting to win over my unapproachable mother. I inhaled deeply after putting the tickets in the pocket of my jacket. "I've got something for you, Mom." I walked back to the living room and remarked that she was sitting on my cream sofa as if it were going to bite her. "I'll pass if there's more coffee." She pushed the full cup aside and wrinkled her nose. "It's something better, actually." I produced the tickets and displayed them. "Cheers to your early birthday." Her well-groomed fingers grabbed the tickets out of my palm as her eyes widened. Venice, first rate. She was silent for once. "You always expressed a desire to go. Do you recall showing me photographs from those trip publications when I was younger? Before your father abandoned us for that waitress, that is. Before I had to work 2 jobs to support you," she remarked fiercely. I swallowed a reply. For 20 years, she had been playing the martyr card, conveniently ignoring the alimony and child support payments that had funded her shopping binges. I forced brightness into my voice and added, "Well, you can finally go now. Together, we can go. Staying at the Belmond Hotel Suriani for 2 weeks in Venice. Everything is set up." She studied the tickets carefully. Her face was unreadable. This must have been really expensive. I've been putting money aside. I felt that spending some time with you would be pleasant. She gently placed the tickets down. "What time do we depart?" "Next week. With work, I've already cleared it. And the next week." She got to her feet suddenly. "It's too soon. I need time to get ready for my shopping. I'm not going to drop everything, you know. Please, Mom." At the salon, I asked Linda about your schedule. "There aren't any appointments that you can't change." Her eyes narrowed. "Behind my back, you went. I intended for it to be unexpected. That old knot in my gut started to grow. That usually showed up when she began to identify issues with my work." It buzzed on my phone. Isabella texted. "Have you informed her yet? How did she handle it?" For now, I choose to disregard it. I had insisted on trying even though Isabella had cautioned that things might not work out. Everyone is entitled to a second chance after all. "Well," my mom murmured as she eventually picked up the tickets once again. "I guess I could manage, but I'll need new clothing and bags. I can't be expected to appear like a visitor in a 5-star hotel." "I've also considered that. I grabbed a gift card for that Fifth Avenue store you like from my bag." The first sincere smile I'd seen all morning was lighted up by her eyes. She ran her finger over the edge of the gift card and accepted it. "Did you actually consider every possibility?" "Mom, I want this to be unique, a new beginning for us." She picked up her high-end purse and got to her feet. "Then I'd best go shopping. It takes time to properly arrange these things." She gave me a startled embrace as I led her to the door. "Teresa, you're a terrific daughter." I sometimes forget that the words were like a kick to my stomach, guilt and praise combined in one tidy bundle. Mom, classic. I eventually responded to Isabella's SMS after she departed. "Yes," she replied. "We're having lunch tomorrow," Isabella answered right away. "Of course. We must talk about backup strategies." Considering the safety measures I had previously taken, I grinned. Isabella keeps separate copies of all significant documents in a secure location. The emergency savings account, the management of the hotel has already briefed, just in case. Because I hoped that this vacation would help us mend our friendship. I had learnt to expect for the best after 20 years of disappointment, but be ready for anything. I recalled something my mother used to say when I was younger as I gazed at her unopened coffee cup. Trust is not bestowed, it is earned. As I picked up the cup, I thought, well, Mom, I suppose we'll both discover if you deserve it or not. As I watched the dark liquid swirl down the drain, I poured the coffee into the wash basin. Venice is in a week. After a week, either everything improved or nothing did. Or I finally realized that certain relationships were irreparable, regardless of how much money or effort was put into them. At least I'd know, however. Flight 789 to Venice Marco Polo Airport had its last boarding call. As I paced close to the gate, I looked at my watch once more. My calls were going straight to voicemail, and my mother was 20 minutes late. My stomach began to feel chilly, but I forced it away. She refused. She was unable to miss. My gaze was drawn to the gate agent. Please, we must close the doors. 5 minutes more. Mom, I apologize, but the flight cannot be postponed. I gave over my boarding card, swallowing hard. I sent a final SMS as I descended the jet bridge. I'm boarding, Mom. Tell me you're on the aircraft already, please. Half of the first-class cabin was vacant. She wasn't there, so I looked around the seats in the hopes of seeing her recognizable blonde head. A grin of sympathy came from a flight attendant. Is there someone I can help you find? My mom and I were on the road. She ought to be in too. The attendant looked at her iPad. Regretfully, nobody has registered for that seat. I slumped into my seat and my hands began to shake. This was not taking place. Before the doors closed, I took out my phone one final time. I'm calling Isabella. Bella. She's not present. What? Was she unable to make the flight? I'm not sure. Her phone is not being answered. Are you able to go on it already? I will inspect her home. Make a call. The flight attendant motioned me to hang up. Isabella answered hastily. We'll work this out. Simply attempt to get some sleep while flying. I was so tired and anxious that I staggered into Marco Polo Airport 8 hours later. I noticed her at that point. My mom is picking up her high-end luggage at baggage claim. With a wave of relief, I yelled out, Mom! What took place? Why didn't you? For a moment, I had a glimpse of something in her eyes as she turned. Shame. Win. Before she ran towards the door. Hold on, Mum. At the customs barrier, I reached for my passport and followed her, pulling my carry-on. My blood froze. I couldn't find my travel wallet, the one with my credit cards, cash, and passport. No, no, no. I dumped my bag on a bench close by. Nothing. I looked on helplessly through the glass doors as my mother sprang into a waiting cab. Miss! A customs official came over. Is everything okay? Mom. She. I was unable to complete the phrase. A text message from an unidentified number rang on my phone. Did you really think I'd let you be the hero, darling? Venice was never our dream. It was always mine. Do not be concerned. I'll make good use of your money. Think of it as compensation for what I gave up for you over the years. Mom, love. I fell on the bench as my legs failed me. Nearby, a young woman raised her head from her reading. Hello, how are you? I gave a head shake. I'm finally crying over my mom. She took my money and passport. She is no longer there. God, oh God. The woman took a step forward. My name is Presley. Let me assist you. We ought to speak with the cops. The police? I gave a sour laugh. She's my mom in a strange nation. I'll never be believed by them. Once more, my phone buzzed. Isabella, Teresa. Your mother's home is deserted. Everything she has is gone. What's going on? I typed with shaking fingers. Everything was taken by her. The emergency money and the passport. This was all part of her strategy. Examine your email. Isabella answered right away. Do you recall your backup plan? When I opened my inbox, I saw a folder named Venice Emergency. It contained scans of my passport, copies of police reports I had sent months before, detailing my mother's prior financial fraud efforts, and Zachary's contact details, the hotel manager I had warned about possible problems. I still had Presley seated next to me. Her expression was worried. "Look," she said, "I am also staying at the Bellman. We can work this out if I can help you get there." Another buzzing sound came from my phone. Isabella has already contacted the hotel once again. She is expected by Zachary. "Do you recall what we talked about? Give her time to reflect. She is one. She will fall more forcefully the higher she rises." I wiped away my tears and inhaled deeply. "Thank you," to Presley, I said. That ride would be appreciated on our way to the taxi rank. My mother's text sprang to mind. "Repair," she had said. "I guess you're not the only one who understands the long-term strategy, Mom. I learnt a lot from you. Too well, maybe." "The motel in Belmont. Please, Cipriani," my voice instructed the driver. "Now be steady. Let her believe she had triumphed. Let her savor her victory moment." My mother was unaware that her well-thought-out strategy had just set off an avalanche that she would never have anticipated. I hardly paid attention to the breathtaking architecture that surrounded us as the water taxi sliced across Venice's Grand Canal. Presley, who was sitting next to me, had already shown me how kind she was by lending me her phone charger and assisting me in getting in touch with the American Embassy. "Your mother has been organizing this for months, then?" Shaking her head incredulously, she asked. "That's how it seems. She had been gradually taking items out for weeks, according to the desk clerk at her building." My phone rang. "Isabella once more?" I placed her on the speaker. "I have some news, Teresa. 10 minutes ago, your mother attempted to use your credit card at Gucci. The one we didn't shut down. Excellent." I forced a little grin. "Does the hotel have everything set up?" "Zachary is in charge of everything. She checked in 1 hour ago," he said, "making use of your reservation. When she attempts to charge anything in the room, she will be taken aback." Presley bent over. "Hold on. You were aware that this may occur. To put it mildly, my mother has a past." I showed her my phone's folder. These are documents from her past mishaps. The jewelry she borrowed and sold, the credit card she obtained in my name, and the moment she depleted my college money. "That's awful," Presley said. "Why didn't you file a complaint, since she is my mom?" And because I was foolish enough to think she would change. The bellman's private dock was reached by the water taxi. With his immaculate suit and lofty stature, Zachary was already waiting there. As he helped me into the pier, he remarked, "Miss Teresa, you've been anticipated. The presidential suite appears to be a cozy place for your mother." "The White House suite?" I arched an eyebrow. "I reserved a room with a garden view. She demanded an improvement. Tried to charge your card for it, of course." His grin was faint. "We said no, but let her remain there for a while. You might want to surprise her, we thought." My mother texted me again, and my phone buzzed. "Darling, the view from up here is breathtaking. You should watch the water when the sun sets." "Oh, hold on. You can't." Zachary gave me a disapproving shake of his head when I showed him the text. "We have security footage showing her trying to use your cards when she first arrived," he added. "Although they have been alerted, the police are not yet on the scene and are awaiting your signal." My arm was touched by Presley. "My room is on the 3rd level, but I still need to check in. If you require anything." 312. "I genuinely thanked you for everything." Zachary took me to his office after she departed. Through a video conversation, Isabella's face showed on his computer screen. "All right," Isabella said. "It's time to go over the plan. Are you certain about this, Teresa? We still have time to contact the cops." I remembered how she had smiled when I handed her those tickets, how many times I had forgiven her, and all the years of manipulation. No, she must acquire knowledge. This time, actually learn. "Okay then." Isabella produced a page. "All of the hotel's security cameras are in operation. Copies of her false allegations are in our possession. Temporary papers are being sent over by the embassy. Additionally, I've made touch with a few fascinating individuals from her past who are anxious to share their experiences. I was given a room key by Zachary. You'll be one story below her in the executive suite. Her room keys have been deactivated. If she departs, she will have to return to the front desk to get entry. Excellent. I looked at my watch. She's going to supper shortly. She never passes up the opportunity to be spotted in a classy dining establishment. Zachary verified that the Aura restaurant is completely booked, but oddly, there is one table left in the middle of the space. Isabella's tone became solemn. Remember, Teresa, let her explore farther. Allow her to believe that she is untouchable. She will fall more forcefully the higher she rises. I was done. We all jumped when there was a knock on the office door, I recall. Presley's head stuck in. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to let you know. Your mother is wearing what appears to be an extremely costly new outfit as she makes her way to the restaurant. I straightened my rumpled travel attire and got to my feet. It's time to prepare. Zachary added, Your luggage, including the dress Isabella sent over, has been delivered to your room. I gazed at the image of my closest buddy on the television. Didn't he consider everything? That is the purpose of best buddies. She smiled. Go change now. Your mom wants to create a commotion. Let's offer her a memorable gift. I felt oddly at ease as I made my way to my room. Perhaps because I wasn't attempting to please my mother for the first time in my life. I wasn't attempting to understand her, alter her, or repair her. All I was intending to do was demonstrate to her what it was like to be betrayed, and I wouldn't have to do it alone because of my pals, both old and new. Candlelight and riches glistened in the Aura restaurant. Wearing the elegant black dress Isabella had selected, I stood at the doorway. My mother had already collected a crowd as she held court at the center table. She is being watched closely by two elderly couples. Subsequently, I addressed my daughter, who was indicating with her wine glass, You put in too much labor, darling. Leave the travel planning to me. With silence in my heels, I stepped closer. The poor sweetie seldom has time for her family since she is so focused on her profession. She went on, wiping a serviette at her tears. I insisted on going on this vacation for that reason. She needs someone to teach her how to have fun. How kind of you. She jumped when I stated that aloud. Tell them more about your squandering of my money, please, Mum. Her face was devoid of color. I assumed you couldn't make it, Teresa. Of course. I looked at her new pals. Did she explain her journey to you? Concerning the theft of my credit cards and passport? The couples looked at each other uncomfortably. You're creating a scene, Teresa, sweetheart. My mum gave a hiss. She forced a grin. Maybe we should talk about this in private. Why? When you abandoned me at the airport, you didn't seem to care about my privacy. Zachary showed up beside me. Is everything in this place okay? My mom's expression brightened. Indeed. I was on the verge of placing another wine order. I believe that was the 82 Bordeaux. Unfortunately, madame, it will not be feasible. The hotel charges have been paused and your credit cards have been refused. There must be an error. She grabbed her handbag. My wallet for travel. But I found this more quickly. I produced a second wallet that was exactly like the one she had taken. Amazing things can be accomplished with a color printer and rudimentary DIY knowledge. When she opened her pilfered wallet and discovered only meticulously created copies of my cards and paperwork, her eyes widened. I answered, The real ones are safe with Isabella, along with proof of all the false charges you've attempted to make today. Now the other diners were gazing openly. My mom's chair scraped the floor as she jerked to her feet. In light of everything I've done for you, how dare you make me feel so ashamed? Like using up all of my education funds or using up all of the credit cards you created in my name when I was 18. I used the money you took from your sister to pay those back. Indeed. Aunt Sarah filled me in on everything. She reached for her handbag. This doesn't have to be heard. To my room I'm going. Your space? Zachary took a step ahead. I think you're referring to the presidential suite that you tried to charge on a credit card that wasn't legitimate. I'm afraid you'll have to go right away. I can't be subjected to this. She frantically glanced around, but her dining partners instantly showed a keen interest in their food. Zachary responded calmly. Security is waiting to escort you out. If you don't mind, we can contact the cops. Anger twisted my mother's face. You're a little ungrateful. Be careful, Mother. I gave the surveillance cameras a nod. They're recording everything. In an attempt to maintain her dignity, she straightened her back. All right, I'm going out. However, this is not the end of it. I said, oh, it's not. We have only just begun. How many of your new pals here are aware of the Williams family, by the way? She stopped. You wouldn't. Another day will come tomorrow. Mom and I learned how to ruin someone's reputation from the greatest. There were 2 security personnel at the restaurant's entrance. I saw the tremble in my mother's hands as she strode past them, head held high. They took your mother's stuff out of the suite, Zachary whispered. We have booked her a room in a better hotel on the other side of town. Excellent. Picking up her half-empty wine glass and the other preparations ready for tomorrow's gala, I took a seat at her deserted table. A number of visitors are very eager to see your mother. I took a drink of wine and grinned. Fantastic. It buzzed on my phone. Isabella is providing a link to a video. My mother attempted to dispute with the front desk before being hauled out by security, according to security footage captured in the hotel lobby. Behind her, her high-end bags rolled. I raised the glass in a faux toast and muttered, Sweetheart dreams, Mom. You will never forget the day that comes tomorrow. I looked at Presley across the restaurant, and he gave me the thumbs up. Whispering on their phones, several guests were probably posting the drama of the evening on social media. Let them speak. Let the word go out. Because they would discover my mother's true abilities at the hotel's esteemed summer gala tomorrow. From everyone she had ever betrayed, not just me, and she would have nothing left to flee to this time. With string players playing in the corner and Venice's finest champagne flowing freely, the hotel's large ballroom was a hive of activity. As my mother worked the room, Presley and I stood close to the entrance. She talked her way into the gala wearing what I knew to be my lost Valentino gown, despite the humiliation she had endured the night before. Your mom has courage. Well, Presley said, I'll give her that. Simply wait. I looked at my phone. Are we prepared, Isabella? Everybody is in their place. It was Isabella who spoke over my earpiece. Who else showed up after the Williams family arrived? The investing firm's Robert, my mom's old employer, the person whose signature she had falsified on business records. Excellent. Gentlemen and ladies. The sound of Zachary's voice echoed from the speakers. Greetings from our yearly summer gala. The enormous displays surrounding the hall suddenly began to show yesterday's surveillance video. My mother had a fit at the front desk, tried to use credit cards that had been stolen, and was hauled out. The audience became quiet. My mom stopped talking in the middle. Her glass of champagne broke on the marble floor after falling out of her hands. This woman may be familiar to some of you, I remarked as I entered the little stage. Giselle. Mom. Tonight's honored visitor is a skilled manipulator and expert scammer. Stop this now, Teresa. 2 security guards stopped her as she attempted to march in my direction. Why halt? I've learned from you to always complete what I start. We were barely getting started when I pointed to the displays. Is there anyone interested in learning more about the Williams Family Trust Fund? An old couple, the Williams, who looked just like their pictures, moved forward. She persuaded our grandson to put all of his inheritance into a phony business. Mrs. Williams spoke in a trembling, angry voice. Only he was. That is untrue. My mom yelled at Teresa, "You have no right to set up the circus. Giselle, is it a lie?" Robert, who appeared older but was just as menacing as I recalled, appeared out of the crowd wearing a pricey suit, similar to the papers you falsified using my name. They cost my clients millions of dollars. The murmurs increased in volume. My mom's face had turned completely white. Or maybe, I added, Linda should be questioned about the money that inexplicably vanished from the charity function. A woman in her 60s named Linda came forward. $300,000 towards research into childhood cancer. Lost. This is absurd. Sputtered, my mother said. All of these folks are lying. Teresa is jealous of my success and is attempting to destroy me. Achievement, I chuckled. Mom, let's discuss success. Present the accounts to them. Isabella, the displays shift to show loan paperwork, credit card bills, and bank statements, all of which reveal a decades-long pattern of fraud and theft. Stealing from others, especially your own daughter, was the foundation of your prosperity. I looked out into the throng. When I was 17, she completely depleted my college savings. Credit cards were opened in my name. She also attempted to leave me stranded at the airport yesterday after stealing my passport. She rushed forward under thankful little, but the soldiers held tight. Not grateful. There was a fresh voice. When our parents left me the home, Aunt Sarah came out of the gathering as if I were ungrateful. When you obtained a second mortgage by forging my signature. My mother's well-crafted facade started to crumble. Please, Sarah. Zachariah said that officers and officials from 3 banks were waiting outside, departments that deal with fraud. My mother responded frantically, "You can't prove anything." But her tone faltered. We can, in fact. Isabella had just walked into the ballroom when I gave her a nod. Every falsehood, every scam, every paper. We have evidence for everything. And there are plenty of witnesses because of your performance tonight. My mother was surrounded by a circle of people. As they linked her to several frauds and schemes they had heard about, their faces displayed both revulsion and familiarity. She screamed, "This isn't over!" But the threat sounded vacuous. Mom, you're correct. It's not finished yet. It's only the beginning. The police would want to speak with you regarding identity theft. The banks want to talk about fraud, and I'm sure that every one of these kind individuals has questions of their own. My mother did something I had never seen her do before when the cops entered the ballroom. She broke down in tears. Her sobbing were real and untidy, not the calculating ones she usually sheds. Please, Teresa, your mommy is me. You are indeed, and I learned all I know about retaliation from you. As the cops came towards her, including how to serve it cold, I looked away. As they let her go, the throng dispersed, my stolen garment trailing on the floor and her mascara streaming. Years of meticulously constructed deception and deceit. Everything in one evening. Isabella gave me a firm hug. Are you all right? I was filled with a deep sense of relief as I watched my mother's figure disappear. I just said, I'm free. I'm truly free for the first time in my life. On the morning following the gala, Isabella Presley, me, and an increasing number of my mother's victims gathered in Zachary's office. Pastries and coffee were delivered by the Williams family. The charity foundation's Linda had data that went back 15 years. Sarah had a pile of falsified papers. She was discovered by the police attempting to arrange a trip to Switzerland. Using another credit card that had been stolen, Isabella said as she hung up the phone. Some individuals never learn, of course. With a sigh, Aunt Sarah laid out her papers on the desk. Take a look at this. A week prior to her death, she even falsified her mother's signature on her will. Linda bent over. That is consistent with her tendency. Shortly after my husband's death, she targeted my charity. She was aware that I would be too distraught to notice the money gone. She waited until a difficult split was plaguing our grandchild. Mrs. Williams went on to say that she always attacked when people were weak. I heard a call from an unidentified number on my phone. My mother's voice seemed smaller than I had ever heard it before, so I placed it on speaker. Teresa, I'm being held at the station. You must assist me in the same manner that you did at the airport. That was not the same. Your mommy is me. You must not allow them to harm me in this way. Sarah, aunt, picked up the phone. Do you recall the summer home you persuaded your father to give you, Giselle? In the safe there, the cops discovered some intriguing documents. Then silence. Sarah, why are you there? Enjoying a pleasant conversation with your other victims. Did you truly believe that the only person you harmed was Teresa? You don't comprehend, my mom begged. There was nothing I could do. Richard walked away, and I retrieved the phone. Your father departed when he discovered that you were embezzling from his business. He did not desert us. He was driven away by you. That is untrue. Mom, I spoke with him last night. 20 years for the first time. Are you curious about his words? More quiet. He informed me about the clients you scammed and the money you took. He took the responsibility in an attempt to shield me, allowing me to believe that he was the villain who left us. Please, Teresa. His statement and the statements of all the other people in this room are now in the hands of the police. Are you curious about the number of persons that come forward following the gala? How many lives did you ruin? The speaker let out a choking sob. I can describe anything. Keep it for your attorney. I hung up. Mrs. Williams lightly caressed my hand. Dear, you're not like her at all. It required a lot of bravery to confront her. She's right, remarked Presley. Even though we've only been together a few days, I can already see how different you are from her. Isabella's laptop displayed something. Speaking of distinctions, have a look at this. A news page appeared on the screen as she rotated it. International con artist exposed at Venice Hotel Gala was the headline. Fraud discovered over decades. It's becoming widely shared. Isabella said, people from all around Paris are coming out about that charity fraud, the London real estate scam. She herself. Zachary entered with new coffee and said that the investigator wanted to speak with everyone. They are constructing a case for allegations of international fraud. Linda straightened her jacket and got to her feet. I'm prepared to tell them everything, though. Silence for 20 years is enough. They each took a piece of my mother's complex web of lies with them as they headed to the police station. At last, it was just Isabella Presley and myself. Now what? Presley inquired. Watching boats sail down the canal, I made my way to the window. We now ensure that she is unable to harm others. Isabella said that the banks are looking into everyone she works with and freezing all of her accounts. Your father is assisting in locating her foreign assets. Once more, my phone buzzed. Another unknown number, a text message this time. Your dad was frail. You're also weak. Do you believe this is the end of it? Teresa, you were reared by me. You're who you are because of me. I will always be a part of you. Isabella began typing on her laptop as soon as I showed her the message. I understand. I'm sending the detective this right now. She shouldn't get in touch with you. She's afraid, Presley noted. She's lashing out because of this. Excellent. I removed the message. She ought to be afraid. Because everyone in this room is scheduled to meet with the prosecutor tomorrow, everybody has a story to share. Isabella smiled contentedly and shut off her laptop. Are you curious about the greatest part? She went to the event wearing her Valentino outfit. She was caught taking it from your room by the security cameras. That's an additional fee to include on the list. I laughed for the first time since it all started. I genuinely chuckled as my mother was correct on one point. I am who I am because of her. She instilled in me the values of intelligence, caution, and contingency planning. She simply didn't anticipate that I would turn those teachings against her. Venice's courthouse was smaller than I had anticipated. I watched from the front row as my mother wore clothing that were provided to her by the jail, which were very different from the expensive clothes she had stolen. Everyone who could travel to Italy for the preliminary hearing, including everyone she had hurt, had shown up. Teresa is called to the stand by the prosecution. The court translator echoed the prosecutor's announcement in English after she made it in Italian. I noticed my mother as I made my way to the witness stand. "Darling," she whispered quietly, "you don't have to do this. Family defends family. When you abandoned me at the airport, was that what you were doing?" As I sat down, her lawyer shushed her. The prosecutor started, "Please explain your connection to the defendant. Although I no longer use that term strictly, she is my mother. Could you explain what happened before she was arrested?" I described everything: the credit cards, the passport that was taken, the intricate hotel setup, everything. My mom's expression darkened. "It wasn't the first time either, was it?" the prosecutor asked. "No. She was 17 when I was..." Disapproval. Suddenly, my mom got up. "I insist on talking to my daughter by herself." The magistrate struck his gavel. "Mrs. O'Connor, please have a seat. You're not understanding," she begged. "She is perplexed. I was stealing it to preserve her inheritance. In retaliation, I opened credit cards in my own name. I did everything for you." The judge struck his gavel once again. "You will be dismissed from the court if you have another outburst." As I went on with my testimony, Isabella gripped my hand. I described every plot, deception, and treachery, the stolen identities, the falsified paperwork, and the college fund. "What about your dad?" the prosecutor inquired. I answered, "He's given me a written statement outlining how she stole from his business and set him up for it." At last, my mother lost her temper. Richard was frail. If I hadn't stepped in, he would have lost everything. Take the defendant out. The judge gave the order. My mother turned towards the courtroom as security drew closer. "All of you are weak. You all have no idea what it takes to be successful in this world. We know what is right and wrong. Something you never learned was pointed out by Aunt Sarah." My mother took a final snap before they carried her away. "Teresa, I gave you strength. I am the reason you are who you are." In the corridor, the judge declared a break. While Presley repelled the reporters, Isabella gave me a strong embrace. Isabella said, "You did fantastic. And wait till she learns about the witnesses for tomorrow." "What is the number of testifying?" Presley inquired. 23 so far. A recognizable voice responded. I turned to see my father, who appeared older, but still recognizable, approaching us. "Dad?" The phone conversation was the last time I had seen him in person. He gave me a hug that seemed like it had been long overdue. "I'm very sorry," he muttered. "I ought to have stood up for you more. Now you're here." I wiped away my tears as I spoke. That's what counts. The prosecutor came up with fresh documents. In 6 nations, we discovered proof of fraud and 3 additional victims who were eager to testify. "She won't escape, will she?" I inquired. "Not for quite a while." My mother appeared to finally realize the seriousness of her predicament as she sat quietly in the courtroom. The growing body of evidence appeared to overwhelm her counsel. "Richard is called to the stand by the prosecution," the interpreter declared. My dad stepped forward, his shoulders straightened. My mom's head jerked upward. "Please, Richard. Last time she made an attempt. Consider our family." He answered firmly, I am here for that reason." He started testifying about the fraud committed by the firm. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother's face. There, I witnessed genuine terror. Not coercion, Not premeditated sobs, but true fear as her meticulously planned life fell apart. "Do you want to say something?" she was asked by the judge. She rose slowly as my father concluded, surveying the looks of everyone she had deceived throughout the courtroom. When she did speak, it was hardly audible. "There is no other way that I know how to be." I stated unequivocally that it is not an excuse. "You're here for that reason." The magistrate gave a nod. "Tomorrow, we'll continue with more testimonies." My mother was being escorted back to her jail. She gave me one final glance over her shoulder. In her eyes, I noticed something I had never seen before. Recognition. She reflected back in all her fractured bits, not of me as her victim, her daughter, or her demise. The lady who believed she was in charge of everything was at last helpless, and at last, I had total freedom. It was a thunderclap of a verdict. Years in jail with no chance of release for at least 15 separate charges of embezzlement, fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny in 6 different nations. My mother remained still, her face a blank mask as the judge gave out the punishment. "Do you want to say something last to the court?" the judge inquired. She turned to face me rather than the judge as she slowly stood up. "I believed I was teaching you how to be tough and survive. I had no idea that I was teaching you how to ruin me. Mom, you ruined yourself. I just revealed the truth to everyone." She briefly fought as the bailiff moved forward to usher her away. "Are you going to come see me?" "No, just one word. Easy, final, free." The courtroom burst into silent chatter as they released her. Presley gave me a hug from the opposite side, and Isabella grabbed my hand. My dad was standing close by, chatting with Aunt Sarah. At my elbow, Miss Teresa Zachary showed up. "You ought to see something." Dozens of people were waiting on the courtroom steps as he led our group there. My mother's web of lies has affected more lives, more victims, and more tales. After the story spread, they all came forward, Isabella explained. Some came all the way from Australia. A young woman with tears in her eyes came up to me. "Thank you," she said. "Your mother's financial swindle cost my grandma everything. We can now at last find closure." They told their stories one by one. Every one of them felt like pulling a weight, breaking a chain, getting hurt, and getting better. Now what? As we made our way back to the motel, Presley inquired. "Right now." I gazed at my mother's attempted steal of the sunset over the canals of Venice. In the hotel lobby, we are now all healing. I was given a letter by Zachary. This came to you. The women's penitentiary was the return address. Something forced me to open it even though I was about to throw it away. It started with my darling Teresa. I'll be condemned by the time you read this. I'm not going to beg for pardon. I don't deserve it. We both know that. However, I want you to know that you ultimately disproved my assertions. Love seemed feeble to me. You demonstrated it with strength. An army of broken people was assembled by you, and you restored their wholeness. My victims become fighters because of you. You are everything. I could never be harsh and strong at the same time, strong without being harmful. I don't regret what I did. I'm pleased of who you've become, but I'm not sure how to express it. Even if it meant that I would fail, it could be the only positive thing I ever did, making the one who would ultimately put a stop to me. Farewell, my sweet daughter. Make your life better than mine was. Mom, love. Isabella took the letter from me, read it, and distributed it. Are you convinced by her? Gently, my father inquired. I said, it doesn't matter. I am no longer influenced by her statements. Our company was treated to a special supper prepared by the hotel cuisine. Everyone who had contributed to my mother's prosecution. Teresa transformed a horror into a movement, and Isabella raised her glass to her as we sat down, to fairness. According to my father, Sarah further enhanced independence. I glanced at these faces around the table, some old relatives and some new pals. They are all bound together by a common path to recovery. Messages from victims all across the world, expressing their experiences of healing and rebirth, buzzed through my phone. I raised my glass to all of us for putting truth above fear. Later that evening, I saw the lights of Venice sparkle over the lake while standing on my hotel balcony. I was joined by Presley. "I have 2 glasses of coffee." "What will you do next?" she inquired. I said that Isabella and I were establishing a network of support for victims of fraud. For those who cannot afford to defend themselves, Dad is also assisting in the establishment of a legal fund, transforming suffering into meaning. She gave a nod. That is true strength. It was a final beep on my phone, a news alert. I was no longer affected by my mother's visage staring back at me from the TV. She appeared diminutive now. Just another crook dressed like a prisoner. I didn't read the notice before deleting it. "What's the finest kind of retaliation?" I questioned Presley. "Living a good life? Being content? Assisting others? That type of power is beyond your mother's comprehension." "No," I concurred. She didn't. The air was pleasant and balmy at night, full of possibilities. There were church bells ringing out in the distance. There. The sound travels through the water, like a reminder that there is light at the end of even the darkest tales. My mother's approval was no longer necessary. I didn't require her affection or her teachings or her perverted form of power. I had something superior: justice, truth, and a chosen family that taught me the meaning of true love. That was more valuable than all the world's stolen wealth combined.